Ubisoft has had some major swings in 2024, and pretty much every swing has been a major, major miss. And to talk about this, and with Ubisoft, they had their earnings call this morning, where they're going to be talking about some things, a conference call, where they're talking to investors along the way. And this gentleman joining us now was they're listening to it. It's Valiant Renegade. Great to see you, buddy. How are you?
Doing well, man. Good to see you. Yeah, you and I talked, Craig. We did a video together Tuesday night on my channel that came out that evening, and you and I both agreed that the tea leaves were getting pretty clear. What we saw was pulling out of the Tokyo Game Show, canceling all the worldwide press events, the early access for media and stuff like this, and everything you and I said was pointing to this thing is probably getting delayed. And the very next morning at 9 o'clock or something like this, I got up and I checked Ubisoft, and there was an update saying they had scheduled their earnings call October 30th, just about a month from now. And underneath that, because French and U.S. securities laws are a little bit different, they have a 30-day quiet period. And then we have stuff like that here in the U.S. too. And what a quiet period is when you legally cannot, 30 days ahead of the earnings call, you can't go out and make any major announcements that would have a significant impact on investors or the stock, right? That's when I called you. I called you that morning. I said, Craig, it's coming. I said, and they're going to have to do it in the next 5 days because there's no way they're going to wait till after earnings and delay Assassin's Creed 14 days before the scheduled release date. Sure enough, 2 hours later, you were 3 minutes from going live here on Side Scrollers, and you picked up the phone. You're like, I'm about to go on. I'm like, check your texts. It happened, and there it was. I mean, it was amazing. But
so you were right. You are the harbinger of truth, as your little subtitle says down there. Now, this company has been under fire pretty much all year, with its stock price just dropping like a bad habit. Now, it was interesting yesterday as they had a conversation. The CEO, Yves Gamon, had actually made a statement talking about what they specifically aren't doing in their games. And the internet quickly called bullshit on this, as the Ubisoft CEO said, talking about the controversy surrounding Star Wars Outlaws and Assassin's Creed Shadows. They said the developer is not actively looking to, quote, push any specific agenda. Now, that may sound funny because it is, and it's hilarious because they absolutely are pushing some sort of agenda, as we've seen.
Whether they know it or like it or not at the management level, right?
Right.
So it's happening.
Right. Now, they talked about the poor performance along the way in the second quarter and how they're looking to now break even this year. But this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of talk about this company, a lot of criticism about this company. And I found this video, actually. I wanted to share this with you guys. There's a content creator I'm a huge fan of called Legendary Drops. And
I watched the video this morning. I know exactly what you're talking about. This is great. Yeah.
So Legendary Drops is he does such a great job of articulating people's thoughts and everybody else's thoughts and putting it into a really concise video. And he spoke with Ubisoft developers and asked them about our concerns. And Kirsha, I think you're going to really hear this, and this is going to strike a chord with some of the things that has happened in the video game industry. And I think that
I am ready.
Yes, I think Ubisoft is just the tip of the spear when it comes to this stuff. But I want to take and listen to about 2 minutes of this real quick. This is him talking about his conversation with Ubisoft developers.
I couldn't imagine that it was possible for anyone to ignore this level of feedback, and Ubisoft has to be seeing it. So I spoke with a few developers from Ubisoft to shed some light on these issues. I started off by asking how Ubisoft internalizes and discusses general criticism from players and the rest of the industry, whether that's the competitive design, agenda-driven content, or predictable games. They responded saying, at a high level, they rarely talk about it. At a project level, they brush it off as toxic gamer talk. As Asmongold correctly pointed out in a video of his, Ubisoft is filled with toxic positivity that prevents any growth.
Want to pause there real quick. We saw this earlier in the year where there was some criticism, and it was shrugged off as "quote unquote" white noise earlier this year in the video game space. So they're talking about the toxic positivity going back once again at a high level. We really don't talk about it at a project level. They brush it off as toxic gamer talk along the way.
I feel like calling it toxic positivity is sort of sidestepping the actual issue. Because to these people, pushing their ideology is more important than making an actually good game. So any criticism of the ideology or how they're injecting it into the game might not be a great idea. That's not really toxic positivity. That's them being like, you don't agree with us ideologically, therefore we don't care what you have to say. Like this, first and foremost, people have to understand this is from an ideological perspective. This isn't just people wanting to do bad things because they're dumb. This is on purpose, and this is malicious.
No, I agree. I 100% agree. Let's go ahead and continue with this.
In a video of his, Ubisoft is filled with toxic positivity that prevents any growth. I then asked, what about the Japanese community's backlash over Assassin's Creed Shadows? It's obvious that they haven't done their research, and even the smallest details are going to be noticed by a culture that's as proud as the Japanese.
Now, for reference, those who don't know, there's been a consistent criticism along the way with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where they've taken Chinese architecture and brought it into a Japanese game. Obviously, along with a number of different things along the way. Kirsha, have you followed this?
I have, and I actually saw, I can't remember their name, but there was a Japanese YouTuber that exposed the Kazuma Hashimoto, I believe their name was, where they were like a previous Sweet Baby employee and a consultant that Ubisoft had used, and they were trying to defend Ubisoft's game here and saying that like the backlash in Japan isn't as bad as it's being reported.
Right, correct. So here we are. He asked the developers about their thoughts on that.
They responded by saying that the criticisms haven't been talked about, and they've only issued demands that we mustn't engage with discussion on that topic publicly. Meaning everything that we've set up into this point, all the criticism that we've had over the years for Ubisoft games, even that of the industry itself, has fallen on deaf ears. I don't know if it's sad or if it's somewhat, it's somewhat cathartic to have that validated. I mean, it's the main complaint that the vast majority of gamers have had over the years, which is that these companies aren't listening to us. And in this case, I have developers that are telling me, yeah, they're not listening to you.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to give them the advice to not talk about it publicly, because once you talk about this ideology publicly, everyone disagrees with you. Like, there's not any sane person that would be like, yeah, I'm all for Marxism. Let's go, dude.
Diane, what were you going to say?
No, I was agreeing with Kirsha. She's absolutely right, and she's done a great job. I've been following her coverage of all the DEI infestation throughout different aspects, because Craig, you know what we do. I mean, we cover, and I've been covering now for years, a lot of this kind of same stuff on the entertainment Hollywood studio side, film and television, mainly from the business side. I mean, I've spent 20 years in the financial industry, so I look at things from a math standpoint. And the arguments I always have with people about this is it doesn't matter that your small disassociated group liked X. Throw in the Acolyte, for example. That was the big recent thing that we were talking about. It was great. We got to renew the Acolyte. We're going to have signatures to bring back this crappy Disney Star Wars ship. The problem is it doesn't matter how much you liked it. The audience out there for that show was nowhere near what needed to justify a nearly $300 million production budget. I'm sorry, this is it. This is about money. These are publicly traded companies. The people running these, the executives in the C-suites, the boards of directors, they have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. And it's very simple. We need to make a product for the lowest cost we can, making it the highest quality, and appealing to the broadest audience that we can for the highest amount of profits that we can possibly get. Once you deviate from those very simple core measurements, you're going to screw up. And we're seeing that in Hollywood. We've seen it for years, mainly at Disney, but not exclusively. And just recently, because of friends like Craig and others out there that I've met in the gaming community, because I'm not a big gamer, It's amazing because there is so much of a cross section here. The cancer isn't relegated just to Hollywood. It's clearly spread. It's metastasized out to everything. And gaming was the next big frontier. Here we are. And what I had, just to let you know, I shared that backstage just to kind of give you, when we say woke makes broke, yeah, this is it. Proof in the pudding right here with this chart. And this is, if you want to pull it up real quick, this is the Euronext exchange. This is the European Union's stock exchange. This is their NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange. This is their NYSE. This is where Ubisoft is primarily traded. The exchange is based in Paris. This is why I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning. I actually forgot to set my alarm. I dozed off last night. I had a live show. We finished up. I was starting to put things together for the Ubisoft for when the market opened. I fell asleep. Thank God my wife, I don't know why she woke up at 3 in the morning. She woke me up. She's like, didn't you have something to do on YouTube? I was like, oh, God. Coffee. And I go in there. And I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, here we go. Right? This thing was closer to 12 euros yesterday. And today, it bottomed at around 9 euros. I mean, we were over 20% losses for the day. And this was based on the news of what happened with Assassin's Creed. This is Ubisoft, okay? They're natively traded in Paris on the exchange. And yesterday, people were talking about, posting pictures of Ubisoft's stock price. It was $11, or not 11, it was 11 euros 40 or something like that, 11 euro 50. And they're saying, wow, yeah, people not reacting well to Assassin's Creed. And I said, look, it hasn't happened yet. They didn't make the announcement about Assassin's Creed until it might have been noon here or 11 a.m. here. But the market in Paris, the Euronext, had already closed. They made that announcement after the bell, which is typically when companies, will make something like this. They don't do it in the middle of the day necessarily. So my point was the pain is going to happen tomorrow, meaning at 3 a.m. this morning, and boom, there we go.
Well,
but I mean,
it's funny you mention that because you have your chart, I have mine as well. You can actually see the chart. There's the pain right there.
Yeah, that's Yahoo Finance. Yep.
Like, holy shit, what a drop off. And when I think it's amazing to scale this out. Go back 3 months where it was
52%. Now go back 5 years. Go back 5 years, Craig. There you go, 5 years.
Oh, my God.
This used to be, Ubisoft about 5 years ago was trading at almost 90 euros. It is now trading at about 9. It's literally been decimated. It has lost 90% of its market capitalization. Right now, Ubisoft, probably in the next couple of days, if this continues, which I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, will actually have a market cap that's going to fall under $1 billion. That's a small cap now. And just to give you an idea of scale, Craig, do you recall what Microsoft paid to acquire Activision Blizzard a few years ago?
Oh, wasn't it $69 billion, I believe?
Just about $70 billion, $70 billion to buy Activision Blizzard. Ubisoft right now is worth about 1/70th of that.
Right.
Good Lord.
Woke makes broke. This is real money stuff. When we say that this will actually cost people billions of dollars, we're not just talking about top-line revenues. We're not just talking about OI or operating income. We're talking about actual shareholder value in market cap. Billions. In the last 5 years, Ubisoft has lost investors $9 billion.
Now, to further that home, there's actually talk of them trying to either take it private or an activist investment group coming in and doing a takeover of the company. And there's even been apparently an investigation that's going to be put together by the board of directors, pretty much to talk about this. Which this is a damning.
I have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, sure, fire away.
You know what the problem is with the board of directors? Who is in charge of Ubisoft right now? Who is the CEO?
Yves Guillemot.
Yves Guillemot, right? And the Guillemot family collectively owns about 15% of all outstanding shares, the value of about $150 billion, $160 billion, $160 million, worth of Ubisoft right now. 5 members of the Guillemot family sit the board.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Out of 12. So you can go ahead and math this all you want, but the math ain't mathin'. My point is the very people who have put Ubisoft into the position that it's in today are the ones saying we're going to investigate.
Well, they're going to investigate themselves and find they did nothing wrong. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, more than likely. Now, the hope is that they really do something serious. And maybe they do turn a corner, but of course, I don't know if you saw this one yet. I texted this to you right before you started again because that's when the news drops. Every time your show is about 60 seconds from going off.
That's the beauty of it.
Guess what happened today, kids? The labor union that Ubisoft is contracted with, has decided to announce a strike because the game developers and employees of Ubisoft do not want to return to the office 3 days a week at the same time that Ubisoft most desperately needs them to fix the crap that they made.
So
That's kind of insane, actually.
This story doesn't stop, does it, Kersh? It just keeps getting worse.
It just keeps getting worse. And I was actually going to ask you a question since you are a finance man here. You were mentioning they have a responsibility to their shareholders, and in recent years, most companies have been talking about stakeholders instead of shareholders.
Yes.
And so I wanted to know, like, what exactly is the difference between a stakeholder and a shareholder? Because I know when they say stakeholder, I'm like, that's a red flag. But like, I personally don't know what the difference is.
Okay, so this is all the E in DEI. This is the equity portion made manifest. So when you are a shareholder, you are a person that has invested your own personal capital into an enterprise. You bought Ubisoft stock in this case, okay? You have skin in the game. Your ass is on the line, right? That's if Ubisoft goes under, you lose your money, right? A stakeholder, and this term has been elevated over the last several years to my disgust because it's now beginning to take precedence, or it has the last few years, over shareholders, at least in terms of social justice parlance. So the problem with stakeholders is that they don't have skin in the game. A stakeholder, and it's a broad stroke term, it could be an employee at the company. It could be the community that the company is based in, like the neighborhood. I mean, there's all kind of wacky definitions. It's everybody else out there that doesn't have skin in the game, but is somehow tacitly, theoretically connected. Now, the employees, of course, are the most closely connected folks, but the problem is the stake for the employee is simply that they'll lose their job. They have to go find somewhere else. They don't have any equity. They don't typically own stock unless they have a stock option program. That's a totally different scenario. We're not talking about that. But the stakeholder idea that has infected corporate America and corporate global, I guess, in this case with Ubisoft, is that it diminishes the importance of the shareholder, the people who actually have financial risk at stake. Okay, and then saying, well, no, we don't have to just satisfy you. We need to make our employees happy. We need to make our employees feel good about themselves. So top line and bottom line monies, right? Profits aren't that important anymore because the employees might want something that isn't as profitable, but it makes them feel better about themselves. I'm generalizing and I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, but not by much.
So if I'm understanding here right, and I'm like deciphering their gobbledygook language, it's basically like they look at shareholders as a problem of capitalism because they are looking for investment and they are having skin in the game. And then the stakeholders are basically returning the means of production to the workers or the people. So it's just another seize the means of production commie speak.
If you wanted to put the name of stakeholderism and you wanted to call him Carl with a K, you wouldn't be far off, Kershaw.
Yeah.
No. This is why I watch Kershaw, because she gets all this stuff, and that's why I love your reporting on this, because you really know your stuff, and you're dead on with this.
Well, thank you. I'm just really bad at numbers, so anything that comes up in the finance sector, I just start drooling like a monkey.
Well, holler at me if I can help.
Oh,
okay,
thank you.
Yeah. Let's actually talk numbers. And the number being 10%, as this is now we talked about this pre-show here, and you see activist investor exclusive. Ubisoft activist investor says it has support of 10% of shareholders in management tussle. Now, this is what we talk about, having a potential of a hostile takeover in a situation like this. The idea of you're trying to secure greater than 51% of the company so you can take it over, whether it's through buying or working in unison with other people who own stock.
Right.
This activist investor, and when we say activist, we're not speaking about like the activist who are in activist developers who are looking to push an agenda.
It's not political activism.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
So talk about this for a second, because this was 1% and now it's 10%.
Yeah.
So the tide seems to be turning a little bit.
Yeah, and it accelerated quickly. I mean, quite literally, was 24 hours ago, it was 1%, and now it's 10. Well, it was 10 this morning, Craig.
True.
I guarantee you it's more than 10 now. So they might have 15 or 20 by this point. So Craig correctly pointed out, an activist investor is just, if you go buy stock in Ubisoft and throw it in your brokerage account or your IRA, you're 99.999% chance you're what's called a passive investor. You're holding the stock with the hope that it will appreciate or pay you dividends and you make money over time, right? An activist investor is somebody who is going to acquire equity in a company like this and that wants to take an active role in the direction of the company, meaning I want to get on the board of directors, I want to influence management, and of course, activist investors, typically, you've got to have a pretty sizable chunk of the stock in order to do that. Usually at least north of 1%. I know that sounds like a small number, but in the world of publicly traded equities, that's 1% plus. You have special regulatory filings you have to make with this SEC, like the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the U.S. So in that case, a great recent example is, we've talked about it on my channel for like 2 years, Nelson Peltz in the Walt Disney Company, an activist investor. And he hates the term activist investor, but this is a guy that bought Disney stock with the express desire to go in and force a change at Disney because Disney was breaking because of wokeness. Okay? The same thing is going on here at Ubisoft. Clearly, there are a growing rapidly number or percentage of shareholders that have no confidence in the leadership. Specifically, and let's call it what it is, the Guillemot family that's effectively running Ubisoft and has been. Now, we can make the argument that it's a management issue, or we can make the argument that it's an employee issue, or it's a combination of the two. But at the end of the day, management made the decision to either take bad advice or initiate this on their own, where they're going to hire people and put people in positions that, frankly, they don't merit. And then we wind up with crappy products like Star Wars Outlaws and crappy products, or at least I think we can honestly assume right now that Assassin's Creed at this moment in time, Thursday, September 26th, is a crappy product. Why do we know that? They just frickin' delayed it 3 more months, okay? So they already know this. So there's a lot of things that have to change. That probably the whole corporate culture. You know, you played that video earlier, which I watched this morning, and everything he described in there is exactly what I'm talking about. So this could become a proxy issue. I made a joke, not really a joke, but I made a comment on X earlier this morning. I said, don't be the least bit surprised if Yves Guillemot is about to get Michael Eisnered. And if you don't know who that is, that was the famous CEO of the Walt Disney Company throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s, until the Disney family and Bob Iger, the current CEO of Disney, jettisoned him out. And it only took about 40% of the stockholders to do it.
So basically, we just need a whole bunch of people who are going to be activist investors to come in and buy enough of a company to be a bull in a china shop and get rid of all of the ideologues and return the companies back to what they're meant to be doing.
Well, yes, Kershaw, but even easier. They don't necessarily all individually have to be activists. I mean, probably what's about to start happening is, or what already has, is that this AJ investment company that had 1% of shares started making phone calls. They didn't go out and buy up 9% more of the shares of Ubisoft. They started making phone calls to all the other guys. They started calling up all the other institutional investors and go, hey, look, we got to change something. Are you with us or not? Yeah, we're with you. We got to do something. So they're making a bunch of phone calls and emails right now. They're having, lunch at 5-star Parisian restaurants or whatever the hell they are. And they're talking about this, and they're building the network. So you could theoretically, buy shares. I'm not giving you financial advice. You could go buy shares of Ubisoft as an example. And if you wanted to say, hey, I'm going to call up AJ Investments and I'm going to say, I bought 100 shares. It ain't much, but I'm going to give you my 100 shares as a proxy, right? You still own the shares, but you're going to trust AJ Investments to vote your shares at the next annual shareholder meeting, ostensibly to dump management.